Good morning. I've called you here today to discuss some issues that seem to be occurring from the line manager's level with regard to management of staff. It has come to my attention that some of the line managers do not fully comprehend how the performance management system works, so I'm going to go over the processes to give you a better understanding of it. When managing performance of staff members, it is imperative that all line managers adhere to the company's organisational procedures and in particular the adherence to legislative requirements, i.e. the Privacy Act and the Fair Work Act. All employees will receive 2 performance appraisals, one as an interim review, 6 months after the more formal 12-month appraisal, and they will be rated according to competencies. By conducting these appraisals, you are giving the employee the opportunity to be fully aware of the tasks and responsibilities that impact on the overall success of CBH, and appraisals are a way of communicating to the employee whether they are meeting the company requirements or not. Through the use of appraisals, it is easy to identify any training gaps as well as to recognise an employee that should be rewarded. Where an employee has been shown to be excelling in their position, they are eligible for an incremental increase within the salary range.
What happens if an employee isn't reaching their targets, and how do we manage that?
In the case of an appraisal highlighting underperformance, a follow-up meeting needs to be organised where the employee has the opportunity to talk about issues that are impacting on their capacity to meet performance requirements, i.e. lack of knowledge or any personal issues that may be creating obstacles for the employee. A performance development plan needs to be worked out by both the line manager and the employee to assist the employee to reach the nominated company requirements.
What format should those interviews take, and how can we ensure the procedures are followed?
All interviews must be conducted fairly and transparently, and the employee can request the presence of a third party during the performance review process. All interviews must be clearly documented. At the completion of the review, the employee must receive feedback from the line manager for their comments.
What if the employee doesn't agree with the comments of the manager?
If the employee does not agree with the results of the appraisal, they are entitled to contact a nominated delegate to review the outcomes of the appraisal. This delegate will then consider all contributing documentation and make a final decision. The documentation will then be given to HR for storage purposes.
After this point, what happens if the employee shows a huge improvement in performance?
If the employee is showing progress with the performance development plan, the process can be ceased. However, if they are still failing to meet the expectations of the company, the case will need to be discussed with HR, and the employee may need to be managed under the requirements of Stage 2.
What is the next step for the performance management of the employee?
Another meeting will be held with the employee where you will clearly communicate to them the issues with their work performance, and the employee will be given the opportunity to respond. At that meeting, you will both work out a performance improvement plan and a specified time period for the employee to meet the requirements of the plan will be given. This time period will be worked out by HR.
What if the problem is caused by an external factor, i.e. personal?
If a personal problem is identified during this process, the suggestion of time off or consultation with the Employee Assistance Program may be required. However, you must clearly reiterate what is expected from them and advise them that you are trying to assist them in meeting the standards required by the company. If they fail to improve, you need to advise them that this could lead to disciplinary action.
Does the employee see any evidence of the meeting being held?
After the meeting, the employee will receive a record of the meeting and a copy of the proposed plan, which will include areas of concern, the performance requirements and assessment, and any agreed training and development requirements, and the time frame for this process. The employee will sign this documentation as an agreement to what was discussed.
What happens if they disagree with the documentation?
Any disagreement with this record can be submitted by the employee as a written submission for review by management, and must be included with the original record. Further investigation regarding the response will be conducted, and this will be followed up at a subsequent meeting.
If after a series of meetings, the employee still fails to improve, then what happens?
If after a series of meetings have been held and the employee still fails to perform, a written warning will be issued. If they still fail to perform after the warning has been issued, they will then be informed that they will be facing disciplinary actions or even dismissal. It may even be that the matter may need to be referred to Fair Work to be resolved through a conference or a formal hearing process.
What happens if an employee needs to be terminated?
The employment termination or resignation should be documented and recorded, and the records will indicate the date of termination, the money to be paid out to the employee, which will include sick leave, annual leave, long service leave, and a written reason for the termination. A copy of this record should be kept by Human Resources and will be put on the employee's file. All relevant paperwork pertaining to the employment and termination of the employee should also be kept on this file. Any items that need to be returned, i.e. keys, security passes, IDs, etc., should be managed by the Human Resources Department. If a car has been part of the employee's package and was involved in the leasing arrangement, the question will need to be asked as to whether the lease has been transferred back to the company or to the employee. The following things will need to be checked by Human Resources. Computer access by the employee will have to be terminated. Transference to another person for relevant business contacts. Credit and credit card facilities have been cancelled. Internal financial delegations and authorisation rights have been appropriately updated. Subscriptions have been cancelled or redirected. Other staff members have been notified of the termination, but definitely not the reasons why. The relevant super fund has been notified. Workers' compensation has been notified if there has been ongoing or a current claim. The manager could also ensure that the reference is made available to the terminated employee. However, the reference should be honest with regard to performance, reliability, punctuality, etc. Often a verbal reference is also required in addition to a written statement of employment, which would simply state the period of service, position and organisation's details for a prospective employer.
What about an employee that excels in their performance appraisals? Do they receive any rewards?
Dependent on the circumstances in the workplace at the time. If it is possible, remuneration for the high-achieving employee is an excellent way to show that they are appreciated for their commitment and dedication to assisting in achieving the company's objectives. Other ways of rewarding employees are things such as the use of a company car, complimentary gym membership, or even additional leave in the right circumstances. I trust that you all have a better understanding of how these things should be done in future, and if there are any questions after this short brief, I would appreciate it if you could either contact me by email or phone me or make a personal appointment. Thank you everybody for attending.
Okay.